This is the only place where we actually experience separation, which puts me into another funny irony of the human affliction is we think in evolution, our goal is to merge as one again, and we're trying to do it on Earth. And the goal on Earth is to live separate, but in separation be unified. So the deeper you separate oneself from another, the deeper unified you become, because that's the goal of this experience. We've lost sight of unifying because half of us are trying to dissolve into the whole, and the other half of us are trapped in ego condition. So we're kind of mixed up on our messages. The whole purpose of coming here is to experience a unique situation, a separate situation, while being connected to everyone else. The deeper you feel within, the deeper connected you feel to your neighbor. The deeper you feel connected to yourself and to that self within, the greater your connection is to everything. I think we talked about you experiencing that suddenly you're plugged into everything. The only way that you're feeling that is because the self woke up and reminded you that you as an individual are the most important thing on this planet. And you as an individual being the most important thing on this planet in your universe is the thing that helps unify the whole.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Welcome to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is this like one of your first podcasts you ever been on?
Oh, it's not one. It is the first.
Well, yeah, thanks. It's weird how I found you, but I'm honored to have you on, and I'm honored to have you on for the first time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's funny. I hear that story often, that it's weird how I found you. I'm like, it makes me feel a little bit like a hidden gem. I have to say, like, I can't complain.
I would love for you to come in and maybe share your life experience. I would love to introduce you because you're an amazing person. I've gotten to know you a little bit, and yeah, I would love to hear your journey to this point. And I can ask you some questions as we go along. But yeah, I look forward to hearing your insights and your understanding that I really admire. First thing before we get started, maybe you can define what an awakening is to you.
Oh, what is an awakening? Well, I would say, honestly, I have observed awakenings more than I've had one. So that kind of goes into my origin story and explaining where this all began for me and how I came into this world. But in my observance of an awakening, it's rough. An awakening is rough. Everybody wants one. Everybody seems to be, kind of like waiting for one on the search for one, but it's rough when it happens. So what I've witnessed in people is deep isolation. When something shifts, if I simplify it and say an awakening is it's literally waking up one day and not being able to operate the same. Yeah. It is so like the Matrix. It's like you took the pill and nothing looks the same. And yet you're trying to navigate a world that externally looks like it used to. Internally feels nothing the same. And to deeper define an awakening, I think it's when the self wakes up. It's when it's not that like you're hit by lightning and all of these downloads happen on the first awakening. It's that something stirs inside and the self wakes up. And then the self doesn't have tolerance for any of the bullshit anymore. It's just not the same. And then in again in my experience, when I encounter people or people that, they find me, they're searching for me because of this awakening, um, they really just don't know what to do with themselves because it is a bit like being dropped off on another planet. It's like you just got picked up by, a claw and taken over here and dropped down and expected to kind of operate within the space of all of these other people that have not quite haven't experienced that level of self arriving. Um, does that make sense?
No, I love that because you described like my first huge awakening, and I love how you had, there's many awakenings. There's a whole process for many people. I've had that really, I call it a glimpse of nirvana, where nirvana means to blow out, and I blew out that persona for a brief moment, and I was in a state of nothingness. Through all the chaos, I was in this black space of nothingness. But then those magic candle that I blew out turned back on the egoic flame, but those identities were no longer had a grip on me. Like I was had a shift in consciousness, and I could no longer go back to who I was. I stopped drinking. I stopped living the way I was living. I woke up from the ignorance, and it's the illusion of separation, and all the pain and suffering that I was causing myself and others. Like I finally seen it. Like I woke up. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. And really you can't, like, on that awakening, you can no longer escape yourself. It's like in that moment, there is no one but you. No one but you responsible for your life, no one but you responsible for your issues. I mean, there's players, right? There's players in the game, but it all stems from you. And I mean, there's two things that happen there with that. It's like you own it and you're like, okay, I'm in control. But also, yikes, I'm in control. Like it's me, it's my fault. It's me and I can do this. It's a lot of me awareness, and that's really heavy for a lot of people. I actually love something you said about the egoic flame. I've been working through this with clients personally because it might be a more popular teaching or trend at this point, but initially, we were all trying to dissolve ego or kill ego, or solve the problem of ego. We weren't really looking for integration. We were looking to, like, we thought that was the thing that had to go. And I've taught my clients, your ego is yourself. Your ego is your personality. Your ego is what defines you. So it's not about getting rid of it. Like, we don't want to kill the poor thing off. We want to understand it. And that's really when the self and the ego kind of merge and come together and some, really beautiful harmony. And, you start operating in life differently. You start using your ego as your best friend. You start using it as a tool to say, okay, my ego looks out for me. It's protecting this new awakened self. It's protecting this self that it feels very raw, very stripped. Once you're stripped of that conditioning, it feels very raw. It's not, I don't know. I feel like you said, you reach that nirvana, and then when you come back down from that nirvana, it's like really that's where all of it happens. That's where the true awakening happens, and the true step into the new venture of self begins. So grab that ego, right? Like hold on to it tight because that's what's going to help you navigate and protect you and keep you from slipping back into the conditioning.
Yeah, I find it impossible to go back. I mean, I can get programmed, which I did eventually through the 12-step community, but I had to wake up from that programming, but I needed that programming to advance in my own journey. But at the same time, I love what you said. The ego's our friend, because I always say the ego's not my amigo when I was unconscious of it. But once I became aware and started to do that
Yeah.
integration, yeah, it says it in the Bhagavad Gita in the Hindu scriptures. It talks about how when the self is conquered, the will is your friend, and yeah, you're in a whole different reality. And I love that. But it's very and we've talked about this. We talked about that spiritual loneliness. I call it mystical loneliness, where like the small talk is no longer
Yeah.
really important to us. Like we care more and we could feel more. We could feel in this joy and suffering of others, it's been really rough, because then you have loss of friends. Like I don't really care about the Raiders who plays for the. I'll watch it if it's
Even though
on with
you wear
people. Yeah, yeah. It's like I love I mean, love that would be my football team, but I don't really rely on it. You know, I don't watch it.
Right.
It's not my identity anymore. Like I care more about why are they homeless in Hawaii or why are they homeless right here in Phoenix. You know, I care about like people more, and
Hmm.
I just feel this. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know even know what I'm saying. I just feel
No,
more inspired
yeah, I
for
get it.
humanity to help uplift humanity. You know.
So I probably have a little bit different take, and that is actually, I think, why people find me in these parts of awakening. I was born woke. If we're using the term, of woke or going into the idea of an awakening, I don't know what it's like to wake up. I only know what it's like by watching people wake up. For me, it's very exciting to watch people wake up because I finally have friends. I finally have, I finally have my homies. Like I,
Well,
I was that strange little girl that didn't understand surface or small talk, or, I wanted to talk about depth and the real things. When people would be like, "Oh, this is so bad," I'm like, "Yeah, but do you know what's really happening? Like, I can tell you what's really going on inside." And everybody's like, "Oh, like go away. That's, it's annoying. And I get it. I get it." And retrospect, as I got older, I understand it. I was very annoying to have around because I was turning people inward all the time. And they're like, "No, I'm not looking to do that. I just want to live." So,
well, I think that's an important point you just said. Because earlier when we started, you talked about how you experienced more awakenings than really having one because you came into this world awakened. And I would love for you to start off your journey with us. Like Gandhi said, "My life is my message," and you have a beautiful message. And coming into this world and to this point, maybe you can share your life journey with us if you don't mind.
yeah, yeah, I'll do my best to keep it to keep it short enough. Sometimes when I tell my story, I feel like I have experienced many lifetimes in this one, or at least enough events to encapsulate several lifetimes. But I was born to very young parents in upstate New York. My mom was only 17 and my dad was barely 20. So I don't know that they knew what they were getting into with me. I was the wily eyed child with crazy curly hair, and I didn't look like I belonged to my family to start. So I think that was, and hearing tells from my ancestors, my relatives. Um, I mean, I'm viewing it through their eyes and I see pictures. So I look at this little girl that's just completely out of place. And I think that externally, like my external presentation, is certainly a great representation for how out of place I was. I have been told I was strange well before I spoke about being strange. I I just behaved differently. I seemed to, and again, my parents didn't really know that I was their first child, so I was the firstborn. They didn't really know, but people that had seen other children would observe me and make comments about being a bit off. But my first memory and my mother's first tell of me speaking how very strange I actually was about 5 years old when I told her that I couldn't leave my room because there was a very angry man blocking the doorway. And he was very angry that we were in his home and he wanted us out. And I was petrified. I remember trying to put on my shoes and I remember we were in a rush. We were in a hurry to go visit. I'd had just a newborn brother at the time. He was a few days old. And we were in a hurry to go visit him in the hospital. And I was not moving quick enough. And so my mom reached in past the man, grabbed my hand and yanked me right through him. And I could smell him. I could nearly taste the cigarette smoke. And I just carried on about this man and how he wanted us to leave. And begged my parents to move out of the house so he could have his house back.
Wow.
So that's my first visceral memory. And it, when they tell the story of what I told, it really puts the pieces together for me because I can go back to that day and recall all of the visuals and the sensation and feeling him in the space. And there was no separation of physical world and spirit world for me in that moment. It's like we coexisted,
Mm.
which later became a very strong message for how we really deeply coexist. There really is no separation. There's little separation, like rice paper separation, not this big thing that we think it is.
So when did you know you were different? From you're in a different reality.
About 7 years old,
Hmm.
probably 7 to 8 years old, I recognized that it was clear to me that I did not see life the way that others experienced life. I had visitors show up in my bedroom, which was terrifying and calming all in the same breath. They would show up to remind me of my mission. I would sit in my room in fear and suffering and um, just longing for my family to get right and do better and for everyone around me to feel better. And so I would take myself to my room and at night and I don't know, I guess in some context it felt like praying because I had friends that went to church and they had mentioned, they found solace in God. They would pray to God and I would pray, I guess. That's what I was trying to do. And in my prayers, I would hear these voices, and these voices sounded like me. And then these visitors would show up and tell me I chose this and it was all going to be okay because I had a mission and remember my mission. And somehow that made me feel better. And somehow that made me feel worse.
Mm.
But it was very clear. So I take this story back to my friends and I'm like, okay, so I did the thing. I asked God for help. And these three beings showed up in my room and they're like, whoa, 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 I don't know that you're talking to God. I was like, but that's who I was asking for. That's who I was asking for. So it had to be that. And they're like, no, beings shouldn't show up in your room. Maybe you're talking to the devil. I was like, well, it didn't feel like the devil. It felt safe. I don't know, Diantha. I think that you're being duped. I think that that's scary. I think you should talk to our pastor. You should talk to someone at our church who then told me I actually didn't have permission to talk to God in that way. And I should stop talking to those beings because, well, one, I was a woman and women don't get messages from God directly.
Wow.
And two, I only if I had gone through the sacrament and become, stepped into priesthood, could I truly be speaking to God. So in that moment, I was like, I don't know that I feel safe in your story, actually, because what I started to recognize was I did have something that happened within my body to tell me what was safe and what wasn't. So intellectually, although those beings scared me, I felt more love from those beings that I'd ever experienced in my entire life. And I felt more fear in talking to the priest about what I was doing. He incited more fear than love and calm. So I think in that very time, maybe not that moment, but through that time, probably 7 to maybe even 11 years old, I started deciding to listen to me because that was the only safe space I had. And I gathered information. I didn't reject everything, but I didn't take it as truth. And I think my rebellion and my wiliness and my acceptance of just being downright weird at times is what kept the message so alive within me. But I certainly during that time recognized it was difficult to fit here.
I know you got into becoming a spiritual coach and into doing intuitive work. What inspired you to get into that? And how do you help people, like you were just saying, trust know that it's the soul, the higher self, really talking and wanting change, not the fear-based mind? How do you learn how to trust yourself?
Lots of trial and error, lots of rejection, lots of rejection of my mission, so to speak. I I didn't want to do this. In truth, I didn't. I felt even a bit robbed in my younger years that this was expected of me. And when I say expected of me, it's really strange because it's not like anybody on this planet was like, this is what you have to do. It was just that I couldn't escape the message of the mission of like, it was so loud and so heavy that I volunteered. Like I signed a document that said, I will go to Earth and I will remember these things and I will teach these things and I will try to help people to the best of my ability. And at like 16, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be anything but whatever this is today, right? And I would try to shut it down and I would try to trialed many careers to try and escape it, but it always kind of found me. So the funny thing is I walked in a sense two paths in that way. I never abandoned my knowing because it served me, but I didn't like the responsibility I felt of having to share it. Because the moment I shared is the moment that I got put back in the weirdo box. Like, and I think people still thought I was weird and they kind of liked me weird. But then when I got into the deep, like, you could really fix your life from this space, I, I see what you're doing. Let me help you see what you're doing. Let me show you the pattern that you're operating in. There was a lot of like, okay, I didn't ask for this. Like um, so really ultimately I had many surrenders over time to accept this. My first major surrender came when my brother died. I was 23. He was 22. He was my best friend. He was the only family member that lived the life that I lived with my parents, if that makes sense. My two younger brothers had medical issues, so they were kind of by default just in a different position, in a different space with the chaos. Like they still witnessed the chaos. It was still tough. I take nothing from what they endured, but they didn't have the same participation. Um, and Zach did. He he knew all the stories and he witnessed all the things. And so losing him was like losing half of myself. And as he was in the hospital, he was in a coma for a bit. He was actually brain dead. He was in a coma initially. He woke up momentarily for like a day or two, maybe even three. And then he coded and he never came back from that code. But while he was brain dead on life support, he talked to me. And at 23, and although I had had a ton of experiences with other ghosts and other beings and so many otherworldly things, I still thought it might be a trick of the mind. It was this sense of wanting so badly to communicate with him that I was maybe making up the story. And yet something within me, that thing that tells me what's right and wrong and true and not, was just lit so big that I was ultimately certain that it was him talking. And he told me stories of coming back. And he told me I wouldn't be here long without him and that it was okay to let him go. And that was the choice we made. It wasn't necessarily because of my conversations with him that we made that decision. We made it from a medical standpoint. And I say we as in, the family made the decision. My parents ultimately were the ones that had to feel the weight of making the call. But um, right after he passed, like right after, he was there. And he was there in the car with me, and he was there at home with me, and he was just, and then he was bringing me friends that wanted to talk to their people. And I was like, what are we doing here? Like, I'm just trying to get through hair school and show up every day. And, it's like tap, 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 sis. I got this person. They want to talk to, he wants
Wow.
to talk to his mom. She wants to talk to her sister. And my colleagues or what would they be, peers in hair school would probably tell you the craziest stories because I went to school one day and he brought a slew of departed family members. And what began as a hair lesson and us supposed to, be trialing these things on our mannequins turned into a Diantha Rose mediumship session with the entire room sitting around in their chairs, including my instructor, just listening to whoever wanted to come through and talk that day. And I wouldn't even probably be able to count, but it was upwards of 12, 15, maybe 17 people.
Wow.
And that was kind of the moment that I realized it was never going away. And I really didn't want it to. If I could keep my brother, I would keep the gift. It's this kind of strange bargaining with it.
Um, you talked about remembering. Did you have like a pre-birth memory, like a soul contract to come into this world? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I have a whole story. We could do a whole episode on how we write the contract, create our plan, what it means to come here. I actually cover that in my book. But yes, I did have deep understanding, and I would call it bigger than a memory in truth, because I could see the conversations. I could see this better knowing self, this higher consciousness of self, having these conversations, these pre-birth conversations. I started experiencing those at the same time, but between like 7, 8 years old. Um, and I saw what I signed up for. It's like they were showing me, like, you signed your name right here. Then I started to understand the importance of our name. Actually, every time we speak our name, every time we hear our name, we're reminded of our contract. We're
Hmm.
reminded of what we agreed to. So I went through that whole experience and saw it from that perspective, but also felt it deeper from an inescapable understanding that we all signed up for this. But that also, the funny thing about that happening, because I did not have a great childhood, unfortunately. And so for someone who did not have a happy or great childhood, I was an incredibly joyful child. And I think that part of that joy came from that deep, deep understanding that I had signed up for this. And there was purpose in whatever was going on. Although human side, it was incredibly painful. And, at times you didn't feel you could go on. Um, the better part of me knew this was everything that I had designed to overcome.
Hmm.
And then my stubborn nature kicked in, and here I am today.
Can I ask you a question? You talked because people that are listening, they may hear something and they may be questioning, like, you were having conversations. Who are you having conversations with, and where were you having these conversations?
So in my mind, I was having them in my room. Um, who I was having them with at the time, I didn't quite understand. I called them my people. Today, I refer to them as my team. Um, I knew that they were in support of me. I knew that they didn't live in a body. I knew that they loved me, and yet they let me suffer. I knew that watching me suffer didn't seem to bother them, which was a bit disturbing. That was an interesting observation for an 8-year-old. It was as though I wouldn't say that they took joy in my suffering, but they felt it's as though they felt conviction or they felt accomplishment in me suffering. And that's when I began to truly understand the purpose of suffering, the purpose of a struggle. Just their feeling of accolade and like, she's really doing it, made me understand that we're focused so much on suffering as being a problem to solve rather than a situation to evolve out of. And when I understood that it was a situation to evolve from, because I thought, well, if they're so excited about this, then I must be doing something right. Because suffering makes us feel like we're doing something wrong, right? If we find ourselves in a space of suffering, we're like, well, we've screwed this whole thing up. We've got to, what did I do in a past life? What did I do in this life? What is this karma doing to me? And I started to understand the true meaning of karma being more associated with a lesson we had scripted rather than a punishment we were enduring. And once I recognized suffering wasn't a punishment, this whole idea of what this team was supporting me in, of how this team was showing up, was I guess it just really cleared the way to keep moving. Although I know you asked this question earlier, and I tend to talk in circles, so you'll have to rein me in sometimes. Um, but in going through this process with this team, I don't know where I was going with that, actually. I know where I was going, but I have to find my way back to it. Will you remind me of what I was saying before that?
Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Um, I almost feel like that movie Avatar. You know, like we put our consciousness into these bodies, and but there's like people watching the whole experience.
Hmm.
Your team. Is that how you kind of how do you look at that analogy with Avatar? Is it, I mean, and what's the purpose? Is it to God experience God? What people or what's the whole purpose?
So, the purpose. Oh, and you helped me remember where I was going, so I can sidebar that. Uh, the funny thing about the purpose is it's too simple for us to comprehend. We want to complicate it because we need it to be bigger. We need the purpose to be a bigger deal and to mean more if we're going to go through all of this shit. If we're going to do this, it's got to be for like a really good reason, or we can't sell it to ourselves. What I help people find is peace in the fact that the purpose is too simple. The purpose is simply to exist on this plane, to live it fully, to show up here and tap back into the excitement we felt before arriving. We had a reason we wanted to come to this plane for this experience. We don't experience life in this form anywhere but Earth. This Earth is its own. We don't experience emotions like we do on Earth anywhere else. We don't experience the highs and lows like we do on Earth anywhere else. And so when you think of, we'd have to go very deep to get into the very beginning to come to here. But if I just go from soul consciousness to a projection of the soul into this vessel known as the self. The soul just wants to observe a different experience. This is the only place where we actually experience separation, which puts me into another funny irony of the human affliction is we think in evolution, our goal is to merge as one again, and we're trying to do it on Earth. And the goal on Earth is to live separate, but in separation be unified. So the deeper you separate oneself from another, the deeper unified you become, because that's the goal of this experience. We've lost sight of unifying because half of us are trying to dissolve into the whole, and the other half of us are trapped in ego condition. So we're kind of mixed up on our messages. The whole purpose of coming here is to experience a unique situation, a separate situation, while being connected to everyone else. The deeper you feel within, the deeper connected you feel to your neighbor. The deeper you feel connected to yourself and to that self within, the greater your connection is to everything. I think we talked about you experiencing that suddenly you're plugged into everything. The only way that you're feeling that is because the self woke up and reminded you that you as an individual are the most important thing on this planet. And you as an individual being the most important thing on this planet in your universe is the thing that helps unify the whole. Does that make sense?
Yeah, which brings me to a question I would love to ask you because you talk about you teach not fixing, but you guide to remembering. I would love for you to expand on that a little bit.
Yes. So if we're chasing fixing, we will always feel broken. There is not a point in this experience, if you're chasing fixing, that you feel whole. Because we're trying to fix something that was never broken to begin with. If the whole purpose was coming here, going through these particular experiences, and when I say like, there's fate and there's free will, and they coexist hand in hand. You really should not have one without the other. You truly can't have one without the other. The fate is the blueprint. It's the idea of what you want to achieve. It's the soul destiny. It's the soul's purpose for entering this field. The free will is all of the permission to run amok, to have your karma met through a different experience, to maybe circle around that experience a few times, to run around the playground and not have to come back to the purpose right then and there. So guiding people to remember, one, their excitement and why they wanted to come here to this playground to experience this, guiding them to remember that the plan is much more simple than they think it is. Remember, they're the captain, that although the soul has influence, the higher consciousness has influence, it's the self and the unique individual that pilots the ship. We just do it with the guidance of that higher consciousness. When you start remembering all of those things, you start feeling a lot less broken. For me, for example, I mean, I should be a puddle given my beginning. I shouldn't function in this world given my beginning. I think one of the most unique things about me, and when I joked in the beginning saying I've experienced so many events that was enough for multiple lifetimes, I'm not kidding. I used to kind of feel ashamed or embarrassed to tell people all of my events because at some point you draw a line and say, man, she's a really good storyteller. I don't know how all of those things can happen to one person, especially somebody who still has a smile on their face. It doesn't seem feasible.
I mean, I have a little understanding of that because I feel there's times where I'm just like reflecting. I'm like, holy shit. Like I feel like I live multiple lives all in one life. What's your take on, is it reincarnation or are we living multiple lives all at once? You hear that theory as well. What's your take on all that?
So I do understand why people feel everything all at once. But my take on it is we build upon our experiences. So from that perspective, we can't live a past life at the same time as this life. We do send messages beyond space and time, so to speak, but we want a complete cycle. The goal of the soul in, incarnating into this self is to complete a cycle. And funny enough, in my awareness, we don't like unfinished business. So I can't see from that regard how we would do multiple lives at the same time. I do think a lot of our life in the one life is happening more like this, and we stretch the timeline. I know that you can go back to an earlier version of yourself, send a different emotion that way, send love, support, nurture that way, and it heals that point in time, which changes this point in time. I've traveled my own timeline. I have mistakenly traveled all over the place, unintentionally, accidentally, and learned very quickly that I need to be mindful of my travels. But in terms of, do we live, last lives life with this life and then the future life with I don't see how that works, because it feels unaligned or misaligned with the soul's purpose. I remember past lives. I remember my past lives, quite a few of them pretty deeply, but they always feel separate from me.
Do you think we could bring in past life trauma
For
into this
sure.
new
For
experience?
sure. I certainly did. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was someone who was persecuted for their voice in a past life, and many, multiple past lives. I don't learn my lessons well. No. What lesson I didn't learn was suppression. I did not learn how to shut up. So that was what I didn't learn well, and ended up being the demise of me in a few lifetimes. And so in this lifetime, funny enough, I lost my voice often as a child. I randomly would just have laryngitis, not be able to speak. I feared speaking up. I I would sometimes use my voice, and I would talk and feel very proud and convicted in the moment, and then regret everything I just said, and the persecution would come, not quite like in the witch hanging or burning or drowning days, but it would come. And in truth, I would tell you, in the past, well, let's say the age of Pisces, this is the first time I have felt safe enough to use my voice without the fear of being, killed for it, I suppose. I guess I could go to that extreme, or, at the very least, put on trial for it.
So
But
maybe that
I feel it in even talking. I can feel the, like, I feel the be careful, watch what you say. I don't know if they're ready for it, but also I'm not good at censoring myself.
well, that brings me back to what you said earlier, unfinished business. Now,
Mhm.
do you think that's part of your journey here? Is that unfinished business to really use your voice? Because you have never done a podcast before.
No.
You've been behind the scenes, but what inspired you to break away from that and really start using your voice?
Knowing that the time is now, and a very, very loud message from my team that has been shoving me to the front rather than behind the scenes. The pressure has grown. The pressure has grown to speak out more, to teach louder. And it's funny, when I was young, I used this voice with spiritual workers, with people that New Age. I grew up in the 90s, 80s and 90s. New Age spiritualists were the thing, and my mom, fortunately, was very into that realm of spirituality. She found it quite fascinating, so I had good exposure to it. And I would go to places and I would listen to their messages, and I would come away, or even say sometimes in the space, they have it all wrong. And that's really not, that's just an annoying 10-year-old. That's an annoying child. That's not somebody with wisdom. And they would try to tell me why I was misunderstanding. I hadn't lived long enough to really fully understand the message. And I would tell them that they weren't hearing the message correctly, and kind of stalemate with it. But I was too stubborn and convicted to shift into their way of believing. So honestly, from probably my younger years until my early 20s, that's what pushed me into the back alley. That's what sent me to a space of, I'd rather stay back here and not argue the teaching. I'd rather stay far from the misinterpreted or misconstrued teachings and hold deep to my understanding. and then just share it with the people that find me in the back alley.
You know,
Until
oh,
three
sorry,
years
go
ago.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, no, go
Until
ahead.
about 3 years ago when I heard from my team, it was time to stop messing around. Enough is enough, and the world is ready for you.
Well, I love that. It's like I was talking earlier about mystical loneliness or spiritual loneliness. You know, it's like when I went to the 12-step community, when I got sober, they talked about living a double life, right? And the alcoholic lives a double life. You know, he's drinking, going, creating all this chaos, but then he's portraying another image that he's okay. But when you have an awakening or come in awakened, it's like you still live a double life, meaning like it's hard to have those deep conversations with people that don't understand. So you try to like just I'm not saying you, but like for me, like I would have small talk just to fit in, but I really don't want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't really want to because you might get offended by your identities or your belief systems, which what I don't really hold on tightly to. It's hard, and for you, my question to you is, how do you not get caught up in all like you see all these people? I see sometimes spiritual teachers caught up in all the political stuff, the division and the us against them mentality, all these different shared identities that people fall into. How do you stay grounded, spiritually grounded, and not get caught up in all that and really stay heart centered in love, compassion, and empathy? Because that's becoming weaponized for
for
people.
sure. I think honestly, probably a lifetime of isolation did a lot of good for keeping me out of the noise. Finding, holding deeply to my knowing, despite what propaganda or story or narrative or rhetoric or whatever was just being fed to us. I'm really, really good at silence. I'm not a fan of the news. I I often don't need the news to alert me to a tragedy. I feel the tragedy upon waking. Um, Not to say I don't get sucked in, but I would truly tell you I don't get sucked in the way of politics. I get sucked in the way of yeah. Sometimes I want to pick up the sword and march down the street into this like state of battle to fight for unnecessary suffering that is happening on this
Yeah.
planet. So if I get sucked into anything, it's certainly that. My husband could tell you stories. I wake up and I'll call him and be like, I just want to go to wherever. And I felt it all. I felt every ounce of what is happening in that space. And it's a difficult thing to feel. But then I send love to the space. I connect to the people there and my heart fills as the tool that has helped me is my love has always been reinforced, whether it's been received or not. And what I mean by that is when I'm in the presence of someone suffering or I'm on the receiving end of someone suffering, my heart fills with love for them because I feel all of their pain and all of their reasoning. And I know the root cause of why something is happening. And so this really interesting big love fills up, it beams out, and then I feel full and validated for the moment I just had. And there's this really soft, peaceful satisfaction and that's the answer to it. That I guess I could go back a little further to younger when I wanted to march around the world and save everybody because I truly in my very confident little self believed that I was an answer to problems. Because I could see deeper into the problem than anybody seemed to be able to comprehend. I thought, just put me in a room and I'll solve everybody's problems. Send me around the world. I'll solve everybody's problems. And the conviction of that little girl still lives within, but I have a greater understanding as an adult that as much as I'd love to get on every plane or boat or march in the streets with everybody, I serve a greater purpose in a different space. I can't chase all of the battles. This comes kind of ties back into my team telling me now is the time. It's time to use this thing that you're afraid to use. And I recognized, honestly, within the last probably 3 months or so, that it's time for me to start talking. Um, I know I'm supposed to be giving you the answer of how I stay grounded in it. Truthfully, I guess if I'm giving an even deeper answer, I understand that there are only two frequencies that exist on this earth. Everything else is a manifestation of that frequency. And so when the noise starts happening, I choose my frequency. I decide if I want to live in a state of fear or if I choose to live in a state of love. And I know more happens from a state of love than can ever happen from a state of fear. And it's like just that, like honestly, that just split decision, just not even a second, half a second decision takes me right back into the space that I need to be in to do the greatest work.
Mm. I
And
love
once you've been introduced to that frequency, like wholly introduced, and I'm sure you have, I'm sure you've sat in it. Once you've been introduced to that, anything else is unwanted. It's not necessary. It's like, oh, you can smell it coming a mile away. You're like, no, I won't take any of that. Thanks. I got this like nice little feast over here I'm working on.
Well, I think once you experience that, I think you develop a deeper understanding of the suffering, whether for
Mm-hmm.
individuals, the collective, because at least for me, I've understood it in myself first. And then it gives me more of a broader lens to look at things from really through the lens of the heart, really, and have compassion, have empathy, and feel that shared humanity, that shared divine oneness. It's something that it happens organically when you have an awakening or a remembrance of who you really are, and that you're not your suffering, you're not the experience, you're the experiencer. I think I think for me it's like wow, like I have like eyes of compassion, and it's really hard to. I don't find myself ever leaving that space anymore. I mean, I do suffer. I experience suffering. I act like an idiot at times. I still get mad and stuff, but I still live in that space, and I have a whole different lens, a whole different way of coping with life, dealing with life versus before. Instead of numbing myself, I'm experiencing it. I'm embracing the experience to learn from it, even if it's hurtful or painful at times.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. My clients would tell you I take great joy in watching people in their challenge, but I know the excitement of the challenge. I think another misconception about me, because I am often in this space, I protect my peace come hell or high water. Like my peace is more valuable to me than anybody else's comfort. I think that's a struggle for, well, I don't think I know that's a struggle for us. It's not what we're conditioned to believe. We're taught once we arrive here that another's comfort is more valuable and more important than our peace. But we're not peaceful beings that way. We're not loving, compassionate, empathetic beings that way because we're inadvertently fighting for peace within while creating comfort for another. And those two things don't always exist in the same space. They can. I have a lot of people that find my peace comforting, actually. They don't feel threatened by my peace. They don't feel discomfort in my peace. They enjoy it. But there are a lot of people that find a lot of discomfort in me protecting my peace over their comfort. And I think, like you said, once you reach that space, and again, in truth, and sometimes I feel like when I tell my story, I tend to beat a dead horse. Like I always had deep love for all of those that rejected me. And I don't really know how to explain that. I don't I don't really have a conscious logistical answer for why, except that I have always seen the person's pain and the deeper suffering going on within the person. So it's like, even if I was being attacked, my human side, my body responds to the attack, my consciousness, my heart immediately connects to why.
Mm.
And when you see life, when you see other beings through that lens, if you can reach, and this is tricky. This is why I teach shadow work. This is why I'm really, really big on protecting the self. I'm not about like, oh, love and light and just let everybody, understand that everybody who comes at you, is doing their best. And no, that's bullshit. That's some spiritual bullshit we've been taught and forced to stomach for decades. It's not love and light. It's protect your peace so your heart can be filled with love. So when those that are not at peace, with those that are at war with themselves encounter you, they know your boundary. One, people can have their shit all over here with me. You can have all your war right out here. It doesn't come into me. But I'm also not saying run away with your war, get the hell away from me, you disgusting whatever. Go find your peace before you think you can be in my presence. Because I don't need their peace to keep mine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Once you find your peace, your heart remains full of love. You only live in that frequency. It becomes your base frequency. Now, does fear rise up? Of course, because it has a purpose here. Being afraid on this planet serves a purpose. We've just run amok with fear. We've just let fear take hold for far too long. So, yes, we should remember that fear is not going to go away. It's what keeps us alive. It's what keeps us safe. It's what keeps us steady. But it's the two truth idea. I don't know if you've heard that. Like I know for certain one thing does not show up in a space without the other. So if there is great love, there is also the potential for great fear. And we're going to have big access to big fear if we have great love. But that fear still speaks. It still has its purpose. It's just what space do I want to come from? I teach my clients to practice a pause. Like just take a beat. Take a beat. If you take a beat to keep once you've determined you want your heart full of love and that's the place you want to come from, that's the lens you'd like to see the world through. Once you make that choice, because it is a choice. It's not my story is proof enough to say it's not how you grew up. It's not who your parents were. It's not what people did to you. It's not your neighbor. It's not the president. It's not the politics. It's not left, right, blue, red, Yankee Doodle. It's not any of these things. It is a choice within yourself to choose peace. The moment you choose peace, you start protecting your peace. You start filling your heart. Once your heart is full, it's easy access, right? I still am afraid of things. I was nervous to get on this podcast today, as you know. All the fear jitters rose up in me, and I decided fear wasn't going to govern this, and we're going to go. But that was a choice, right? I still have challenges in my life, despite my peaceful, demeanor, my peaceful exterior, interior, whatever. I still have challenges. I still get mad. I find my emotions valuable. I find anger valuable. I find bitterness valuable. I find frustration valuable because what I've learned over my lifetime is my emotions speak to me. They don't own me. They speak to me. But I did go through a point in time of my life rejecting emotions, trying to stay in that elevated space of love and light and peaceful. And what kind of spiritual worker was I if I wasn't peaceful at all times? And if I got mad, oh my God, who saw me get mad? Like who witnessed that? Oh, and I've joked and I tell people all the time, my husband, my kids will tell you when mom's mad, the fire comes out. And I have accepted that is as valuable as all of the love that I bring because and as long as we are living on this planet, as long as we are incarnated, as long as we are in existence here, we are going to have troubles. We're going to be met with challenges. If anybody thinks or tries to teach that you ascend to some space and you reach some nirvana on earth and it just remains there, right? That's the state you live in. I would tell you, you've joined my departed friends. You are not on this planet any longer. You just don't know it. You know?
That's why I said glimpse of nirvana. earlier.
Exactly. You did. You did. And that was such a keen insight because yes, I take people to another realm. I want you to fill your pockets with stardust. Fill those pockets, fill all your buckets, all your crevices, put it wherever you can, and then bring all of that back down to earth with you. And then let's embody what we discovered.
Mm.
Let's use what we discovered. The goal isn't to find nirvana and stay there. I could tell you ways to get there. We shouldn't put it on the podcast. It's not the right way to get there. Right?
Going back to shadow work, how do you define the shadow and what does it look like to work with you doing that shadow work?
What does it look like from my perspective or my client's perspective?
How
I'm
about
just
both?
kidding. I actually just, it's so funny to say that because I just started another group. So I do a 3-part guided practice in remembrance. I broke it up into 3 parts to make it digestible because one of the things that's very difficult about healing or self-discovery or really getting in tune with the self, unless you're one of those sleeper cells that gets kicked with the awakening. I saw that in your yod that I was texting you about that earlier. Unless you're kind of kicked in the teeth with an awakening, when you seek it, it's a difficult thing to do and live life. It's difficult to go through a process of discovering and go to a job, be a parent, engage with other people who are not even remotely close to trying to reach any level of awareness. So I've broken it up in 3 parts to make it something that people can do and still be functioning in the world.
Wow.
And we begin in the return. I just finished up that workshop with the return. And the return is really just kind of opening the door, playing a little bit with the idea of connecting back to your true nature. We don't deal with shadows yet in the return. We're just trying to keep it light, feel into what the self is before all the conditioning. Because once we have that story on board, we feel safe enough to kind of step into the next phase, which, most people that come to me are looking for ascension and they find something else. I open their minds and their eyes to the idea of ascension. I open their connection to their higher consciousness in the return. And then we walk into the shadows. We descend. So my second part that I just started yesterday is called the descent. And what do I mean by shadow work? It's facing the parts of yourself that you don't like, that you really, really wish were not a part of you, that you don't see value in, that have only gotten you in trouble, that have only caused problems, and deciding to keep it, deciding to see its value, deciding to view it with eyes of compassion, even be able to say, I see how that served me then. Because what happens with most human beings, and generally speaking, most believe they're doing the right thing. Even the people that are harming other people, in truth, believe they're doing the right thing. Yeah. So when we talk about shadow work, I think, and I could tell you, I truthfully don't know. I haven't followed other people's ways of shadow work. I've only had what my clients have expressed to me. They have tried to dissolve. This goes back to ego idea. They've tried to dissolve or abolish or get rid of their shadow. They're trying to leave it behind. And in the descent, we go through the hallways and we collect all of the shadows and we bring them along with us. And we see how you express from a fear frequency in shadow and how your shadow can serve you. Because shadow by nature is not negative. Shadow is of value. It shouldn't go away. You don't have light without shadow. You don't have shadow without light, right? It's the yin and yang. It's the balance. So when you learn to view your shadow as a way of serving you, you start to connect to the idea of how it gets in your way and how it can be of service. Mm. And then it's no longer the shadow frequency, that lower vibrational frequency. It's now like your partner. It walks side by side with you. And, again, like for me, one of one of my bad traits is how big, like one of my reactive shadow traits, I guess you could say, is how big I go, how big I respond. And I tried to make that very small for a while. Instead, what I did was come to terms with my shadow and know when to use it.
Mm.
Know when my shadow protects me, I guess is the best way to put it. Learn. And so that's the thing, is like recognizing the shadow, the way that it projects or manifests, because that's our problem with shadow, is really how it projects or manifests when we are unaccepting and unhealed. And then finding that shadow can project in a healthy way and serve you once you've not absolved it, but resolved the parts you've left behind. In truth, I'm just kind of circling back around to, it's really when you leave your shadow behind,
Yeah.
honestly.
So it's like pulling the unconscious and making it conscious
Hmm.
in many ways. And then a deeper understanding and, more types of awakening occurs.
I think so, because it's when you reject it, right? When you shove it out of your awareness and you don't want it to be a part of you, that you become imbalanced.
Mm.
When you have an awareness of it, one, you're in control because you know that's a side of you. And two, you're in control and you know that's a side of you. So you know when it serves you. And sometimes you're going to use shadow, or you're going to dip really heavily into it. And it's going to be like, in retrospect, I wish I didn't need to do that. I
Yeah.
just didn't. And that's okay too. I think that's probably the bigger thing, or one of the bigger things I teach in all of this, is have some grace for yourself. We're all human.
Yeah.
We're all here for the experience. I have lived, I don't even know how many lifetimes to count. I have my recall of 3 within probably the age of Pisces. I have 3 on my mind. And this is still the first life I've ever lived as this one. So it's still the first time, even with all the wisdom, even with all of the experience, even with the highly evolved soul idea. It's still the first time. It's still my first podcast. It's still the first, right? When you have some grace for that, you stop getting trapped by your mistakes. You stop living in like the moment of the mistake, and you see what the mistake can bring you.
It's like fertilizer becomes fertilizer and you water it
Yeah.
through that understanding by learning
Yep.
from the mistake and then you grow or remember, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
amazing how many memories we have locked away. I mean, it's amazing and it's intentional. Like we couldn't, let me tell you, people wish, they tell me all the time, Diantha, I wish that I knew what you knew. And I appreciate that. I really do. And I understand how it must look so amazing to be so aware, but it was, I would trade. Well, I wouldn't. Not at this point. That would be a lie. I really, my shadow is lying. One of my biggest shadows is I use lying to survive. And so now I'm like this, just, I always have to, I can't lie. It comes out after. But anyway, so I wouldn't trade. However, younger me would. Younger me would have. It, I would have liked a life of ignorance, because that ignorance is bliss thing, it's a real thing.
Mm. Can I ask you a question about those two different frequencies, fear and love?
Yeah.
It seems like, and what are your thoughts on this? You hear about these elites, this hidden hand, the secret government controlling the governments, um, dark forces, the archons, you hear all these different types of names. Do you believe there's other forces out there trying to manipulate and control? You brought up propaganda earlier. Because if you really look at it, if you watch the news, it's all fear based. Everything's fear
Hmm.
based. Very little love that you see in the news. They're giving more fear, more hate, more anger, that lower frequency, right? Do you believe there's other forces out there trying to create this?
I do. Um, I believe there's other forces in people that, I mean, we don't know them, right?
Mm.
Like ultimately we don't really know the people that are in control. But that creates some fear. Just the idea that we don't know them stimulates fear within those of us that are affected by the control. I can feel, I guess the better way to put it is I can feel as we break free from that fear frequency, I feel it grab hold of us. I feel it hold, like fight with all its might
Yeah.
to keep hold, like tar, like sticky tar. Like as we're pulling our legs out of it, it's pulling back twice as hard. So the more what we're seeing right now in the world is the more of us that are rising in our nature, in ourselves, the more of us that are going within and rising in our own frequency, we're threatening to that fear that has a life of its own. That frequency has a life, and that frequency is fed by those that live in fear. It's so it only lives because enough still live in fear, right? Um, but it's really, oh gosh, we got to go back. We'd have to go back so far to before fear. We'd have to go back to before fear became a manifestation of hate and evil and control, and go back to when fear was just merely a source of survival, of a balance of, you've seen toddlers come into the world, right? You've seen babies, toddlers. They fear nothing. If fear did not have its place here, we wouldn't survive 3 years on this planet. So at one point, fear had its place supporting in perfect balance with love. It was when people began to fear deeper and didn't like the idea of the sensation of fear. And we started to get further and further disconnected from ourselves, and fear grew greater, and then fear became control. And um, so because of that, oh, I know this is a long-winded answer. Because of the way fear has grown, I do think at this point there is a manifestation of very, very heavy fear-based controllers in the realm. Now, whether that's just an emanation of energy or actual people, I probably both.
So it's a manifestation of our collective fears,
Mm-hmm.
our collective consciousness.
For sure. For sure.
Wow.
But the funny thing is, even the people that we're mad at for controlling us are just governed by fear. They're just lacking love in their life. They're lacking the understanding that if they operated from a space of love, if they operated from a space of whole and complete self, they wouldn't have to operate out of fear, and we wouldn't be under this fear suppression.
I mean, I hear even the political leaders, it's always these us against them. There's putting people
Yeah,
in fear. Do you think they're controlled by these other beings, the watchers or whatever you want to call them, being used, manipulated because
I
of their traumas and
do.
fears?
I do. I think that the figurehead that we are mad at answers to somebody else. And now whether that's energetically or inhuman, right? I don't know. We've never seen them. We've never seen them. So in truth, and the funny thing for me is, to me, it doesn't matter living here or on the other side. It does energy or human occupation doesn't matter to me because it all speaks energy. So I don't know if there truly are beings. I mean, do I think there's outer beings that are controlling and have hands on? No, because I do know that fear does not exist outside of this realm. So there can't be galactic beings that are just governing fear, right? Like they'd have to live someplace other than where we come from. We come from a place of love. Where we come from, our source is only love frequency. So they'd have to be either such incredible outsiders, or they only exist here in this bubble, this aura of earth. And it doesn't matter to me if they are people above the elite or if they are just big, big energy above the elite. For me, it's one and the same.
What's your take on aliens, extraterrestrials?
I do believe so, like the gray man and things like that. So I do believe, I mean, I would tell you that the beings that visited me in my room were aliens. I also have a recall of being a child multiple times and being like beamed up. I've come back with markings on my body. Do I think I had an alien abduction? I don't know. I don't think aliens are what we think aliens are. I
Mm.
think I there's no way in my comprehension that we exist here and only here. I know we have other planets, other places that we experience, that we choose to go to. I know Earth is one of a kind. So I think there are, I mean, if our soul is our higher consciousness and our soul impacts through influence and enters the space, and if ghosts can enter the space for me, or I can see them because they're already here, right? Then beings of a greater consciousness or less contained, let's say, so they're less dense, their frequencies maybe a bit higher. They're not,
Mm.
they don't knock on wood and they can move about and all of that. I do believe that that exists. I think that it's just a soul's journey in a different space, just one of less density than we have here.
Yeah, thank you. What's your take on what's in your eyes the difference between religion and spirituality?
Oh, don't make me say it. Well, sticky, sticky spot. Depending on your view of spirituality, it
Yeah,
can be one and the same.
yeah,
It can be one
right.
and the same real fast. I think that's what I experienced as a younger person. I honestly, I've struggled probably in the last decade, especially with the term spirituality. I don't even feel, unfortunately, and they're all coming for my head now. Unfortunately, I went through a time where I didn't even like saying I'm spiritual because spirituality became organized. Spirituality became something that had rules and governance and like this indoctrination even. And that was troublesome. That's probably one of the things that made me want to speak out more, honestly. Um, if I could tell people one thing, okay, I'll narrow it down to one thing. Only you are in charge of you, and you are not in charge of another, ever. So, in that regard, we have freedom and free will to do as we please. Now, in that same breath, we build in structures of safeguards. We're like AI, we're like robots. We programmed this vessel with its experience, we programmed our consciousness with this experience, and then we built in safeguards. I don't know about you, but myself, my children, most people I know don't have to be taught that harming another person is a bad thing. They just know it. That's a built in safeguard. A built in safeguard is not to hurt another and to feel something deep when another is harmed. Those are all programmings. So, wait, what was the question? There you go.
The difference between religion and spirituality.
Ah, yes. So, when spirituality that is so incredibly simple becomes like religion, we have a problem.
Mm.
We've just created a new religion, and the world has had enough of religion. I don't think, I mean, we talk about Christ consciousness. I deeply understand Christ consciousness. I deeply understand that I don't think that is what he would teach us today. I think If I were in his shoes and I mean, I think of myself, right? I walk around and I talk a certain way and I live a certain way and I teach hundreds of people a certain way. And if I was gone and then somebody wrote a book about me and then changed all of my teachings, I'm probably coming back to haunt some people. Let's be real. If I'm coming back to haunt. It's just, I really, I would love, 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 love. I have a lot of like, I have a lot of Lilith energy. I have a lot of Plutonian energy. I would love to just dismantle the systems. And I would also tell you there if we had to dismantle all systems to take down the idea of the systems to rebuild, I'm good with all of them. I'm good with spirituality having its moment of death and rebirth as well. And I think that we're stepping into a rebirth of spirituality. It's funny because I want to call it that. I really, really do. And I don't have a better name for it. If anybody's got suggestions, I would love to hear them. I just fear that if we have suggestions, we're going to put a label on it in a box, put it in a box, and then it's going to become a same situation. Um, I don't know what I would call it. Humanity? Can we call it humanity? Can we change religion to humanity?
Well, it's funny you say that because, like, that's my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. It became a religion. It's
Yes.
spiritual movement originally, and became a religion. And there's all these set of rules, even though they say there's none. And and you have to live by them. And if you don't, then, I've been outcasted from it because I don't
Yes.
parrot parrot the indoctrination. And
Right.
it doesn't allow. It's like you're in this invisible box, and then you can't go outside of the box and you get trapped
Right.
in it because it becomes your identity, and it's a shared identity and
Yes.
wounded language, and it's very limiting. And I'm not talking down on it. I'm just being real because I love it so much. It helped me get on this path, but I also been a heretic, looked at as a heretic because of it. And the word heretic just means choice, trusting myself and making my own choices, not as the co-founders created it, but following my own intuition, my own authenticity, which
Yes.
groupthink doesn't want you to have.
Well, and the heretic is also the one always seeking more wisdom.
Mm.
So it's, I think you're right. And it's same with therapy. Any system, right? Any system has its place for a time. But if you don't outgrow the system, if let's take yours for example, you experience alcoholism. You experience alcoholism because of a wound. Your coping mechanism was alcoholism because of XYZ, what have you. Doesn't even matter, right? Now you're in a system to recover from the situation. If you still are showing up, do I need to be really careful here? How much can I talk about Alcoholics Anonymous?
No, 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 please talk. Be honest.
If you're 20 years later under the mindset that you need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, put up your hand and say, "Hi, I'm Diantha. I'm an alcoholic." You've claimed an identity you will never escape. You are not going to grow beyond that alcoholic identity. That was a pathway, not a new identity to claim. In fact, your alcoholic identity was not an identity, not a true one. It was a condition from a different experience. So you can't get back to the self while standing there claiming to be a false sense of self. You have to finally say, I don't need this any longer. Therapy, it's great. It's great. Please, like if you are in therapy, do not hear this wrong. It is so important. It is a valuable tool. But at some point we have to recognize that the only thing keeping us trapped is the fact that we're still telling the story. I don't tell the story any longer about what hurt me. I refer back to it when needed, but it's not my story.
I appreciate that because you're saying everything I've been saying, but outside of me. and it's a confirmation. Also, yeah, I could see clear. You know, when you tap into the mystic within yourself, you mystics are known as seers. You can see things, and you can
Yes.
see the veils and the illusions and the invisible prisons we get trapped in as
Yep.
human beings and as this human experience. And I seen it so clear, I was no longer trapped in it. I even
Yes.
suffered because I was trapped in it.
Yes.
But that
Yes.
suffering turned into wisdom, spiritual
Yes.
insight, it gave me,
Yep.
and I needed that at the time. I needed
Yeah.
to have this programming. They say neurons that fire together wire together. Neurons that no longer fire together no longer wire together. I needed that to change. But it served its purpose. But now I had to move
Yes.
on because I talked to people several years later I haven't seen, and they're like, "What happened to him? Oh, he's gonna drink again." Because you're
Yeah.
taught you're never cured.
Right.
That it's like,
Right.
yeah.
And it's not, it's so funny because it was nothing to cure
Yeah,
from. It was
exactly.
simply like an evolutionary state.
Yeah,
There's just something to evolve from. Yep.
yeah, yeah. It's funny when you said that. I was already in my head. Yeah, there's nothing to cure from. It was just at the time, alcoholism is just an attempt to escape human suffering. But then when I
Yes.
fix that,
And you,
every you're free. You're free from that.
yes.
That Yeah, it's crazy. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
It's it's funny. Even myself, I do have a lot of answers. I've learned that about me. I used to struggle to it, like, openly admit that. I have wisdom. I don't understand how I have it, but it almost feels greedy and wrong to just keep it inside. I went from a person who was afraid to tell everything I know to a person who's like, it's kind of a jerk move that you don't share what you know with people because, like, what, you just get all the secrets and you get to live your life and then no one else gets some access. So I've learned to be more open about knowing. But one of the things that I cannot stress enough, so I used to do one-on-one sessions for 15 plus years. I publicly did them for 15 years. Prior to that, it was like the funny stints in my cosmetology school, and that led into friends and word of mouth, and go see Diantha. She's like a witch, or she's a seer, or she's a mystic. Um, I don't even know what to call myself, but I was very happy to help people one on one. I love my work. I love watching people come alive. I love seeing them light up. I love seeing that spark, that self within light up for, like, maybe the very first time. Um, but it just got to where everybody thought they had to be with me to have that.
Mm.
So I had to make this choice, which was incredibly painful, probably on both sides of the coin. It hurt me to stop helping in that way. It made me sad. Um, and I know it made a lot of people sad, but it wasn't teaching them about the mystic within.
Mm.
I was trying, don't get me wrong, with every session, I would overload people with so much information. I'm like, listen, you got to take all this home in your basket and hold on to it forever. Okay. They're like, I don't even know what you told me, but I feel amazing. And that's good enough for me. Until can I book with you again? Can I come back again? I need my dose of Diantha. I'm like, shoot, that's not what I'm trying. I mean, I don't mind it. Don't get me wrong. I love sitting in session, but it's also not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to create a reliancy on me. Not because, I mean, what does it hurt me, right? But it doesn't help them. So I realized I had to cut off the supply in order to help people understand. I want to teach them how to live from the space I live from. Will I teach them to be me and access all of this wisdom super easy and just know it? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I can teach them. I can show them how I know it. I can open them, awaken them. If they're not waking up, if they're not already going through their awakening, I can help them stir some shit up. We can bring it out and I can show you how to use it. If you're already awakening, I'll take you down the road. I'll hold your hand for a little while. We'll walk through some of this awakening because I know it's a lonely road. But at some point I want to like put you on your bike and take the training wheels off and give you a little push and watch you go.
I appreciate that. Do you have any final thoughts? One question I like to ask people: if I could put you on a big screen up in the air, and everyone has no choice but to zoom in and hear you, what kind of words of encouragement or wisdom that you would give the world?
Learn to love yourself before anybody else. Learn to be selfish. Remove the definition we've created around selfish, because at its core, it means being full of self. And this world needs everybody to be so full of themselves, we can't stand it.
I love that.
That'll change a lot.
I love that. Thank you. I was telling Neil Donald Walsh, and I wrote an article recently on Substack, and I said, the problem with loving thy neighbor as thyself, which is supposed to be the greatest commandment from Yeshua, is most people don't love themselves or fully know who
You
they
got
are
it.
because they're caught up in all these labels and belief systems
Yep.
and identities. They've forgotten who, and traumas, they've forgotten who they are.
Yep.
So
You got it. Nailed it. We can't comprehend. We think we can. We run around the world thinking we do. But turn to you. Until it does. People don't love it. They don't love when I say it, but I'm like, you don't love the way you think you do. You really don't. If you can't love you, you are not loving people the way you think you are. And that's a hard truth we have a hard time facing. But until you figure out how to love you, I love myself very deeply. It took a lot to get there. It took a lot, even with my knowledge. It took a lot for me to love me. So I get it. It's no easy task. But if you just put all your effort there first, you'll change the world.
I appreciate you coming on. Do you have any
Thank
other
you for
words?
having me. Any other words or work?
Anything that comes to mind that you wanted to talk about that we didn't, or
no, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I have a lot more. I have a lot more to say, but I don't think anybody wants to listen that long. But no, yeah, I'm just working on stuff. And if you want to find out all the crazy things I'm up to, you can follow my Instagram, the Diantha Rose. I do have a website. You can reread my story I told, diantharose.com. But no, I think we're good for now. I'd love to talk again.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on, and I will put your links when I upload this video, and I'm going to end it with something from your website.
Okay.
This work isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about meeting yourself with compassion, understanding, and the roots of your pain, and reclaiming the wisdom and gifts you already carry within you. I appreciate you coming on. Namastizzle.
Namastizzle.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a break. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on a day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.